Good morning and welcome again to Jewelry Making Made Easy by Ellen at Oldsmar Beads. This will be project number 4, and today we are doing kind of an intermediate, beginner to intermediate wire work. We're making a wire loop chain and beaded bracelet. The only tools that you will need is a ruler, a flush cutter, and a round nose plier. Now my round nose plier, if you'll notice, I have marked with a black magic marker the spot where I want to make my loop so that each loop is consistent. And when cutting my wire, you use the flush cutter side for the side of the wire that you're going to be working with. This way you have a nice even cut and nothing sticking out and poking you when you wear the bracelet. I like to start with the end to put a lobster claw on. And what's great about this bracelet is you don't have to mess with crimp beads or um, jump rings to attach. I usually pull off about 8 inches of wire, and the reason for that is that I feel there's less waste. If I try to cut each link individually, I usually wind up with a lot of waste. We're using artistic 20 gauge wire, and this bracelet was made with artistic 20 gauge non-tarnished silver plated wire. And I will have both available in my shop as well as the kits. But like I said, you could use any assortment of beads. I would just be careful that you don't use beads that are too big. Otherwise, this type of bracelet will not lay right on your arm. Okay, so making sure this is not a flush cut end. Making sure that the end is a flush cut. It's nice and flat and even. I pick up my wire using my finger as a guide, as I showed in my earring video. I bend the wire at a 90-degree angle. I want it to wind up to be approximately a half an inch, just a little less than a half an inch, 6 to 7/16 of an inch. Then I, with my marked round nose plier up, I hold my palm up to the side, grab a hold of that wire, leaving just a little bit sticking out of the end so it doesn't slip off, and I make a 3/4 turn. Pick up my lobster, which has a little loop on it, slide that on there, and then close my loop. Now this particular bracelet, I'm making the stations alternating 2 different looks. The first one will be the crystal. This is, like I said, I think I said, an 8x5mm light Colorado topaz rondelle. I'm using 4mm round brass beads. So there's the brass bead, the rondelle bead, and another brass bead. Again, slide that down, hold it straight up, get a grip, take my round nose pliers. I want that little dot showing up. Hold the plier just above the bead so you're not putting stress on your bead in case it's a delicate bead and crack it. Using my finger as a guide and using the back of the flush cutter to get a nice flat, which it didn't do, a nice flat cut. Grab my round nose plier. Now that's a little less than half an inch. Grab my round nose plier, right where that black dot is, leaving a little excess sticking out, and make a complete loop. So I have my first link done, which has the lobster claw on it. Now my second link, I'm going to make with these Picasso beads. So I pick up my wire, make sure I have a nice flush cut on the end, holding the wire down when I cut it so it doesn't pop up in my eye. Bend it at a 90-degree angle, approximately just a little less than a half an inch. And grab it with a little bit of wire hanging out, a full turn, and closing that flush up against the wire. Pulling it straight again. I'm going to put on a 4mm brass, my little Picasso bead, if I can find the hole, another 4mm brass, holding it straight, and my plier just above the last bead, tiny little bit of space, bend it at a 90-degree angle, using my finger as a guide, so I'm cutting it just a little bit less than a half of an inch, with the back of the plier facing the cut. Nice fresh flush cut. Grab my round nose plier, right where I have the mark, and turn it 3/4 of the way. The first side I closed, the second side I left open so that I can attach it to my other link, hang that on there, and then close that loop up fully, sitting flush against the other piece of wire. It really doesn't take long at all to make one of these bracelets once you get down making that loop. Again, picking up our wire, making sure I have a flat end there. Pick up my round nose, bend at a 90-degree angle, use my finger for a guide, just a little less than a half an inch, and I grab that wire with a little tiny piece hanging out, close it all the way, making sure that the nose of that is sitting right against the straight piece of wire. So now we're again on a crystal link. Put my 4mm brass, my crystal, rondelle, another 4mm brass, and again, hold it straight up, grab my round nose, bend at a 90-degree angle, using my finger as a guide, snip it, grab my round nose right where I have it marked, and make a 3/4 loop. Grab my chain, hang it on there, and close the loop all the way, making sure that the loop is sitting right against that other piece of wire. So now we have 3 stations, which are that's about 3 inches. I'm going to want this to be probably close to 8 inches. I've already done the center of the bracelet, just for the purposes of not making this video too long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just open up this loop and attach it to what I just started and close that loop up. Now, I don't know if you can see, but my loops are pretty much consistently the same size. Excuse me, every once in a while, there might be a little bend that you don't like. You can straighten it out. It's still not straightened out. Okay. I got to be nice and straight. Okay, so at this point, we are at 6.5 inches, so we'll need 1 or 2 more. And I have some wire here that I've already cut. Excuse me. Allergies. Okay. So the last station is a crystal. We're going to do a Picasso. Bend my wire at 90 degrees, using the length of my finger as a guide, making sure that's a flush cut there, a little less than 1/2 inch. Grab my round nose plier right where I have it marked, bring it around a full turn, closing it, having it lean right up against that straight wire. Pick up a 4mm brass, a Picasso, and another 4mm brass. See how this guy is not straight on the bottom? All I have to do is grab it with the pliers and straighten it. I am so sorry. Okay, again, just above the bead, bend at a 90-degree angle. Using my fingers to support it is a lot easier. Cutting it off, it's approximately less than 1/2 inch. Grab my round nose right where I have it marked and make a 3/4 circle. Grab the bracelet, hang it on the last link, and close my loop. Let it sit right on that wire. Now we are actually pretty close. This last link is going to be the last link. So what I'm going to do with the last link is I'm going to make this loop, this end loop, just a little bit bigger than these loops, because you're going to attach your lobster claw into that loop. See, this loop is a little bit bigger than the others. So instead of 7/16 of an inch, I will probably bend it over, I'm going to say, a little bit more than an inch. You don't want it too much bigger. Let's see what that is. That is a little bit more than 1/2 inch. That's 3/4 of an inch. So where I have my mark, we don't want to bend it around there. We want to go down a little further. You notice the round nose pliers gradually get larger. So I'm going to go down about halfway between the back and my mark, and I'm going to grab it and make a loop. And I'm going to close that loop, making sure that the end of the loop meets the straight piece of wire. So you have a larger loop on the end, which is where your lobster is going to hook onto. And this, the end of this is going to be a crystal. 4mm brass, my light Colorado topaz, crystal rondelle, 4mm brass, and we're going to do our regular loop, holding it straight up and down. Grab the wire just above the bead, fold it over my finger using it as a guide, Snip that off just a little less than 1/2 inch. Grab my round nose where I have it marked. Make a full circle, 3/4 closed. Grab that loop on the end of the bracelet, attach it, and close the loop. And it is very strong. Those loops should stay. And there we have it. Let's see how long this bracelet is. It's just a tad over 8 inches, which is a really good size. I have a 6-inch wrist. This will dangle a little bit, but this type of bracelet, I like to dangle. What I don't like is trying to close it. There, it's not so hard. I hope you enjoyed this video. Remember, kits are available at my Etsy shop, www.etsy.com/shop/oldsmar-beads. Or, like I said, you can use any assortment of beads. I do sell the artistic wire. So, thank you for visiting. Have a good day.